All right, we're going to start off here with a little mayfly pattern. This is a pattern that I really can't say it's my pattern, but I've changed it around a little bit, and that's what's kind of fun with fly tying, is that you can take something that you've seen and kind of make it your own in your own little way. This isn't really using any technique that's mind-shattering, but it definitely is a very effective little pattern that's very easy to see. Requires very inexpensive materials. There's no hackle that really needs to be involved. So this is a great fly for someone who's getting started with fly tying. You can do this fly fairly simple and fairly easy without investing a lot of money into hackle, which is what keeps a lot of people from tying some dry flies. Is just the cost of getting your initial hackle purchases made. So we're going to start off. This is I like to use on a lot of my dry flies, especially my parachutes and stuff that float real flush to the surface, to use a straight eye hook instead of the downturned or the up eye hook. This straight eye hook will help keep this fly riding real well. So I'm using actually a Dairiki hook here, which is their 310, and this is a number 16. I'm going to start by attaching some UTC 70 denier olive thread. I like this thread because it lays really flat, which helps to make real nice heads on the front of the fly. So we're going to attach our thread to the hook, and then we're going to use, for the tail material, this will imitate kind of the shuck. This is an Antron yarn, and it comes in a lot of colors, so you can make variations on this pattern very easily by just changing the colors of the Antron material and also of your wing. So we'll take a little piece of this Antron here. We'll snip it up. Usually, if you're tying your smaller flies, this Antron is a little too much in one bundle, so you're going to need to split this bundle down. I like to get it usually about in half for a 16 or 18. If I'm doing a 20 or a 22, then I'll use probably a third of it. So we're just going to tie this in right on the top. I use a pinch technique to keep this material right on top of the hook. Do a couple pinches, hold it back, and then wrap right to the rear of the hook. A good judge for if you're at the right spot on the hook is if you let the thread hang down, it should hang down right about at the barb. And that barb will tell you that you're right before that hook goes to the bend and you're on the nice flat part of the hook. So we'll go ahead and tie that in. Then I'll come forward, and instead of trimming this off, I'm just going to wrap right over the top, and this will help to keep the same diameter on the shank of the hook throughout so that my body is a nice even shape. A lot of times if you trim this off back here, you'll end up with a hump at the rear, and then you won't have an even body. Then you can come in and you want to trim this tail off. You want it to be about the same length as the shank of the hook, and that'll give you your tail. You can also do this if you want to fancy it up. You can put a little ball of dubbing here and put some microfibets in for the tail, or you could use hackle tips, which would give you a little nicer tail. This is really going to imitate the shuck as the insect comes out. A lot of times the mayflies, they'll trail a shuck behind them, and this kind of imitates that. So these are the microfibets that you can use as well. And you can, that's the nice part about fly tying, is you can always change up what materials you're using and make the fly a little bit different and make it yours. Now, for the wing, what we're using here is a material called poly yarn. And poly yarn is a very floatable material. It has a lot of buoyancy to it. So you don't have to, and it's also nice because if you're going to do this compare-done style with deer hair, the deer hair is a little tough to work with. This is really easy to work with, so that's why this is a great fly for beginners. This poly yarn, I'll use it in a lot of different colors, and the color of the wing really is more for the fisherman to see the fly than it is for the fish's sake. So I'll tie this fly even in the bluing olives. I'll tie it with a real dark wing for when you get those real heavy glare days and some cloud cover where it's tough to see. The dark color will stick out really well on the water surface and make it really easy to see. If you're on a real bright sunny day, then I'll do a gray or even a white sometimes, because the white will be easier to see on the water. So you can vary up the color of this wing so it's more visible to you. You could even probably go as far as using hot pinks and oranges if you wanted. I've never really tried it. I don't know if it would do anything as far as the fish's sake, because they're really just seeing the silhouette. But the poly yarn's really as much for you to see the fly as it is for anything else. So we're going to cut a little chunk of this poly yarn. And then again, its full chunk will probably be a little too big. So I'm going to take out probably about a third of the fibers here. And we're going to take this, and you're going to come up and we're going to tie our wing in. And you want to come up to about 2/3 of the way up the hook. We're going to lay this right on top and do your basic figure 8 crisscross. And this would be how you would tie in wings for a spinner. So once you get those tied on, now you're going to take this poly yarn and rotate it right underneath and pull both pieces straight up in the air. This is the same way you can do a parachute as well with this poly yarn. And you're going to come and build a nice little hump right in the front of it, keep it standing up, and come behind it and do the same thing. Make a nice little hump to get that to stand straight up. Then I kind of crisscross front and back just to get that really straight and square. Okay, so now you have your poly yarn wing sticking up. Now I'm going to bring this thread right back to the back. If you wanted to, you could just use the thread for the color of the body, but to make this fly a little more impressive for the angler to look at, not necessarily for the fish, we're going to take and make it a biot body. And this is just a turkey quill that's been dyed an olive color, and you can get these in all kinds of different colors. So you can make this for a PMD, you can tie it larger for green drakes or mahogany duns or any of your mayfly species you can imitate with this fly. So we've got this turkey quill, and on this turkey quill there's a little tiny kind of heel in here. When you tie this in, you're going to want this heel facing down. What this will allow you to do is when you wrap this around, there's going to be a leading edge on this side of the turkey quill here. And what this leading edge is going to do is it's going to give you a nice rib to the fly. If you tied that facing up, you would end up just getting just the color of the body and there would be no ridge sticking up. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to trim off the little tag end. We're going to tie this in place, wrap it right back to our starting point, and then bring our thread straight up to the front. All right, now you take a pair of hackle pliers and you pull this straight up, and you want that little heel that's on that piece to stick out towards the eye of the hook. You'll know it's tied in right if it's sticking out to the front. Now as I wrap this, you'll see this little edge start to stick up here, and that gives you the segmentation of the body, just to give it a little bit more appeal. And you've got to be careful because these biots are fairly brittle. One thing you can do if you're going to tie a whole bunch of these at once is if you take these and soak these quills overnight in some water, it'll make them much more pliable, kind of almost rubbery, and it'll help you from breaking them as much. But if you're just going to tie a few of them, you can get away with not soaking them. So I'm going to bring this up and it'll give us our nice little segmentation, and I'll tie it right off here. Tie that off, trim it. Now we have one last little step here, and this step is just adding a little bit of dubbing. And this is just a dry fly dubbing. This happens to be made by a company called Nature's Spirit. Superfine is kind of the universal dry fly dubbing, but there's also some natural dubbings you can use as well, beaver, things like that. And so we're going to take this dubbing, and the key to using any dubbing is making sure to do it in very small amounts. You can always add dubbing, but it's very hard to take it away. So what we're going to do here is take our very small amount, and all we're going to do is wrap it right around this thread to make a dubbing noodle. So put a little bit of it on, and all we're going to do is, I like to start in the front. That way I can do this crisscross around it, so that I make sure and get good coverage on the underside of the hook. Because that's a part that you can't see right underneath here, and that's where you're going to miss your dubbing, and that's what the fisher's going to see. So really concentrate on trying to get that crisscross around the post material there, and that'll make sure you get it all covered up. Then we're just going to add a little whip finish here on the front. I usually like to do 2 if I've got the room for it. And we trim off our thread, put a little drop of head cement on it, just to keep everything in place. You're going to want to trim this right about at the same length as the hook shank. So I pull it straight up, come in and snip that off. Then you're just going to pull these fibers to the side, and this will give you kind of the compare done look. And this fly, a lot of people have tied it, and it's a nice simple fly that doesn't require a lot of expensive or tough materials to obtain, and it floats very high. And you can see you want to get that kind of splay on this that splays 180 degrees around the hook. So you basically want to have a half circle around the hook because that's what's going to help support this fly in the water. But that's the little Downy Dun is what we refer to it as, and it's a great little pattern.